The Ghost of the Gin Fizz. The sky over the Yalu River was a raw, unforgiving blue, a canvas for the most lethal ballet the world had yet choreographed. Up here, in the cold, thin air, Second Lieutenant Daniel Chappie James Jr. felt a familiar, electric thrill. It wasn't the thrill of terror, but of hyper-focused competence. A sensation that made his world shrink to the shimmering prop arc of his P-51 Mustang, Gin Fizz. It was January 1951, and the war on the ground was a frozen, desperate slog. But in the air, the stakes were escalating with a brutal, almost poetic speed. The Mustang, a queen of the Second World War, was finding its reign challenged by the screaming, swept-wing arrival of the MiG-15, the spearhead of Soviet aviation technology. Chappie knew, with the chilling clarity of a man whose life depended on it, that the Mustang was now a ghost in a jet age. He was flying with the 332nd Fighter Group's 44th Fighter Squadron, the famed Tuskegee Airmen, albeit the name now carried a heavier, less triumphant resonance. Integration was officially underway in the Air Force, but the 332nd still flew its iconic, if aging, prop planes, maintaining a legendary excellence in the face of transition. They were the ground attack specialists, the close air support for the beleaguered ground troops, a role that demanded absolute precision and courage under fire. 44 lead, confirm target coordinates. We've got a suspected armor convoy snaking south out of Sinuiju, crackled the voice of his flight leader, Captain Johnson, through the static-laced radio. Confirming lead. We'll give 'em the pickled plums, Chappie replied, his voice a steady, rhythmic baritone despite the G-forces pulling at him as he banked the Mustang. Pickled plums was their slang for the potent payload of rockets and napalm they carried. The P-51 Mustang was a masterwork of piston engine flight, but it was also a study in wartime compromise. Its incredible range, a signature of its World War II escort duties, made it perfect for long-haul ground attack missions deep into North Korean territory. The Packard V1650 engine, a license-built version of the British original, gave it a distinctive roar, a sound that the GIs below had learned to associate with salvation. However, against the 600+ mile-per-hour MiGs, the Mustang was a sitting duck. Chappie and his squadron mates had to fly low, fast, and constantly check their six for the jet predators that would often zoom down from the stratosphere, turn on a dime, and leave a stream of blazing cannon shells in their wake. It was a stressful dance, an aerial ambush waiting to happen. Chappie pushed the stick forward, initiating a shallow dive, the cockpit filled with the scent of high-octane avgas and ozone. He checked his instruments, manifold pressure climbing, coolant temperature steady. His left hand instinctively rested near the trimmer controls, keeping the heavy fighter level. The 6 machine guns, .5 caliber Brownings in the wings were armed, his finger light on the trigger in anticipation of the strafing run. The sight of the Korean landscape, a fractured mosaic of snow-dusted hills and frozen rice paddies, rushed up to meet him. The ground attack. His eyes, sharp and practiced, caught the telltale sign of the convoy, a faint trail of dust and engine smoke hugging the narrow mountain road. It wasn't just trucks. Chappie's training kicked in, filtering the visual data. He saw the distinctive boxy shape of a few Soviet-made T-34 tanks embedded in the column, their barrels attempting to point skyward. They were within range. Tally-ho! 4 tanks and 6 trucks, heavily dispersed, going in hot, 2 rockets and 1 full burst per pass, Chappie commanded. He was the first to peel off. The P-51 was a masterwork of piston engine flight, but it was also a study in wartime compromise.
Its incredible range, a signature of its World War II escort duties, made it perfect for long-haul ground attack missions deep into North Korean territory. The Packard V1650 engine, a license-built version of the British original, gave it a distinctive roar, a sound that the GIs below had learned to associate with salvation. However, against the 600-plus mile-per-hour MiGs, the Mustang was a sitting duck. Chappie and his squadron mates had to fly low, fast, and constantly check their six for the jet predators that would often zoom down from the stratosphere, turn on a dime, and leave a stream of blazing cannon shells in their wake. It was a stressful dance, an aerial ambush waiting to happen. First pass, napalm and rockets. He pickled off the napalm tank first. The fiery canister arced gracefully before hitting the ground near the lead T-34. A massive, choking cloud of burning jellied gasoline erupted, instantly turning the snowy hillside into an inferno. The smoke and heat momentarily blocked his view, but he held his line, maintaining his altitude for the rocket run. Whoosh! Two high-velocity aircraft rockets, HVARs, fired simultaneously from the underwing racks. They screamed off the rails, trailing smoke, and slammed into the middle of the convoy. One hit a fuel truck, turning it into a spectacular chrysanthemum of black smoke and orange flame. The other punched straight through the light armor of a cargo truck. The enemy ground fire was instant and vicious. Tracers zipped past his cockpit, a flurry of red dots trying to intercept his path. The ZPU anti-aircraft guns they were using were accurate and deadly. "Breaking left! Take over 2! Watch the flak!" Chappie shouted. He hauled the stick back, pulling a tight, neck-straining G-turn, the airframe groaning in protest. The speed of the dive had given him enough kinetic energy to perform the maneuver, but it left him vulnerable. Around, it felt like a sledgehammer blow, slammed into his left wing root. Not a direct hit on the engine, thank God, but a severe jolt. The stick felt marginally looser, less responsive. The MiG threat. As he recovered from the turn and gained a little altitude, a sudden, dire warning from high above sliced through the chaos. "Mustang traffic! MiGs inbound! High and fast! Brake right! Brake right! You hear me?" It was a strained voice from a patrolling F-86 Sabre pilot, a friendly jet fighter that patrolled the area known as MiG Alley. The Sabres, however, rarely dared to fly as far south as the ground attack missions required, leaving the Mustangs exposed. Chappie's heart hammered against his ribs, but his mind remained cold and logical. This was the moment. He looked up and back. Two black, deadly streaks, MiG-15s, diving like stooping hawks from an altitude where the Mustang couldn't touch them. They held the decisive advantage of speed and height. He had seconds to decide. Run for the deck and hope the terrain confused their aim, or fight an impossible battle. "Gin Fizz is going low," Chappie yelled, pushing the nose down toward the tree line. The ground attack roll now became a desperate escape. He put the powerful Merlin engine to the firewall, wringing out every last knot of speed out of the old bird. The Mustang speed was critical, and Chappie knew its limits, about 440 miles per hour. The MiGs were closing at over 600. The first MiG opened fire. The heavy 23mm and 37mm cannons that MiGs carried were terrifying. A single hit from the 37mm could obliterate the Mustang. A stream of smoke and fire laced the air just behind his tail. He yanked the plane into a hard, low-level turn around a solitary, jagged peak, hoping to force the jet into an overspeed stall or an awkward line of fire. The pilot of the lead MiG, inexperienced or overconfident, followed too tight. The jet's superior speed was now a liability. It overshot. This is it. Chappie, a man who would one day become a four-star general, an icon of strength and professionalism, banked hard, bringing the nose of his gin fizz around in a tight, desperate pursuit curve. The Mustang's incredible maneuverability at low speeds, a characteristic the jet lacked, was his only salvation. He had less than 1 second of clear shot. His thumb slammed the firing button. 6.5 caliber machine guns roared, their high rate of fire spewing a torrent of armor-piercing and incendiary rounds. A flash of light appeared on the MiG's fuselage just behind the cockpit. Not a kill, but a serious wound. The jet stuttered, lost control, and began a slow, agonizing spiral toward the peaks. The second MiG, witnessing the near-fatal mistake of his wingman, pulled up instantly, disappearing back into the safety of high altitude. Chappie James leveled his wounded yet triumphant
P-51 Gin Fizz and set a shaky course for home. The incredible weight of his narrow escape settling over him, knowing he'd be back tomorrow to fight the new war in the old way, a ghost in the sky.
Chapter 2: The Unwanted Queen. The flight back to K-47 Air Base near Chinhae was a long, cold study in mechanical nursing. Lieutenant James, focused and methodical, treated his wounded P-51D Mustang, call sign Gin Fizz, with the utmost care. The airframe felt subtly different. The round that had slammed into the left wing root had not only damaged the structure, but had likely compromised the fuel cell sealant. He kept the RPM low, monitoring the temperature gauges like a nervous parent. He ran a silent mental checklist. Fuel crossfeed, steady. Oil pressure, holding. Magnetos, good. The Packard V1650 Merlin engine, that powerful 12-cylinder liquid-cooled heart, was performing its task with its characteristic guttural authority. It was the Mustang's defining feature, a masterpiece of engineering that gave the aircraft its incredible performance ceiling and range. The Mustang's immense range, over 2,000 miles with external tanks, was what kept it essential in Korea. No jet fighter in 1951 could match the P-51's endurance for ground attack deep behind enemy lines. While the F-86 Sabre owned the skies of MiG Alley near the Yalu, it lacked the loiter time and load capacity for the grueling close air support missions. "We were the old shoe," Chappie would later write in a letter home. "Everyone loved the Mustang, but they wanted the Sabre. We were the dependable workhorse, the unwanted queen of a war that had outpaced her." As he approached the coast, the vast blue expanse of the Yellow Sea provided a moment of stark contrast to the grim brown and white landscape he'd just left. He lowered his gear, the heavy clunk of the wheels locking into place, a comforting sound. The debriefing. K-47 was a whirlwind of mud, machinery, and tension. As Gin Fizz taxied to the revetment, the ground crew, many of them veterans from the segregated units of World War II, rushed out. They had an almost spiritual bond with these aircraft. Master Sergeant Al Sparks Jenkins, the crew chief for Gin Fizz, a wiry man from Alabama with hands permanently stained with hydraulic fluid, was already examining the damage before Chappie had fully climbed out of the cockpit. "Lieutenant, you're back late, and you brought a souvenir," Sparks said, his voice laced with concern, pointing to the gaping hole near the aileron connection. "Flak," Chappie confirmed, stretching his cramped muscles. The sight of the damage always brought the danger into sharper focus. "I got hit on the first pass, but the good news is we took out a T-34 and got a good run on a fuel truck. The best news is I think I put some hurt on a MiG." Sparks paused, running a gloved hand over the damaged aluminum. "A MiG, sir? You tangled with a jet in this old girl?" The question held respect, mixed with a healthy dose of dread. "He got too hungry and came too low. The P-51 is slow, but she can turn inside of anything they fly. We just need to keep her healthy enough for the next time," Chappie said, placing a hand on the fuselage. The Mustang was a part of him now, a complex machine whose every vibration and sound he understood intimately. In the operations hut, the debriefing room smelled of burnt coffee and cigarette smoke. Chappie delivered his report to Major Charles B. Smith, his squadron commander, a man with the weary eyes of someone who'd seen too many good pilots not return. "You have a T-34 confirmed, James. That's excellent work. The Army will be happy," Major Smith said, initialing the log. "Now, this MiG claim? Are you sure you bagged him?" "He was spiraling, Major, out of control, definitely smoking and not pulling Gs." MiG-15s rarely fell to the propeller-driven Mustangs. It was a statistical anomaly, a testament to pure skill and the MiG pilot's error. While the official kill would require confirmation, the morale boost to the squadron was immediate and palpable. The official Air Force policy at the time was clear. The Mustang was an air-to-ground platform. Engaging MiGs was a matter of self-defense and often an act of sheer madness. "Keep your head on a swivel, Chappie. They are sending them lower now. They know where we are. And tomorrow you're flying an early morning rocket run on a bridge over the Yalu River. They're trying to reinforce the western flank. I need that bridge down," Smith warned. The technical edge. Why the Mustang persisted. While the jet age had arrived, the Mustang held specific, vital technical advantages that kept the 332nd Fighter Bomber Group relevant. Ordnance flexibility. The P-51 was a versatile platform, capable of carrying a massive payload of up to 2,000 pounds. This included rockets, like the 5-inch HVRs James used, bombs, and the devastating napalm canisters, the most effective weapon against entrenched infantry and armored columns. The Sabres, primarily designed for air-to-air combat, were less efficient in this role. Low-altitude performance. The Merlin engine was optimized with a two-stage, two-speed supercharger. This design, revolutionary in its time, allowed the Mustang to maintain near sea-level performance at high altitudes, but also gave it exceptional power and responsiveness at the lower altitudes required for ground attack. This low-altitude maneuverability was its saving grace against the MiGs. The 50 caliber argument. The 6 M2 Browning 50 caliber machine guns were an American staple. Although smaller than the MiG's heavy cannons, the 50 calibers had a very high rate of fire and an excellent trajectory, allowing pilots like James to host down targets and deliver a dense cluster of rounds with minimal lead correction. For ground strafing, the volume of fire was often more valuable than the size of the projectile. As Chappie walked out of the hut and into the cold Korean night, he looked up at the stars. The next mission was already set. The bridge at the Yalu River was a heavily defended target, the kind of mission that demanded not just skill, but an absolute commitment to flying into hell and back. He found Sparks still under the wing of Jin Fizz, flashlight in hand, already stripping the damaged panel. "She'll be ready, Lieutenant," Sparks muttered without looking up. "We'll patch her up, tune the Merlin, and give them another taste of the Jin Fizz." And Lieutenant Daniel James Jr. knew they would. They were the Tuskegee legacy, the pilots who had fought for the right to fight, and now they were fighting a brutal new war in a venerable, aging machine, the last propeller-driven fighter flying deep into the enemy's heart. Their commitment wasn't to the plane, but to the soldiers freezing in the foxholes who waited for the sound of the Merlin to signal salvation.
Chapter 3. The Iron Bridge and the Human Cost. The pre-dawn briefing room on K-47 was a place where anxiety became strategy.
The air was thick with the smell of exhaust and fear, barely masked by the odor of cheap coffee. Lieutenant Daniel James Jr., now routinely referred to by his old nickname, Chappie, stood over the large topographic map of the Chongchon River area. The mission: close air support, CAS, for the beleaguered UN forces, specifically targeting the main pontoon bridge near Yalu River. This bridge was the enemy's vital lifeline, feeding supplies, and more critically, fresh troops to the front line. Knocking it out would buy the UN ground forces precious hours, perhaps days, to stabilize their lines against the overwhelming human wave attacks being hurled against them. The target is heavily protected, the intelligence officer, a young, nervous lieutenant, droned on. They've nested quad .5 caliber batteries in the hills flanking the approaches, and at least two 37mm anti-aircraft cannons directly on the riverbanks. Gentlemen, this is a hornet's nest. Chappie studied the map. The Chongchon was a sinuous, frozen artery cutting through the mountains. The P-51 Mustang, which was now officially designated the F-51 in the USAF inventory, was ideal for the long range, but its liquid-cooled Merlin engine remained its Achilles heel. A single well-placed round could puncture the radiator, leading to catastrophic engine failure in minutes. The pilots of the 18th Fighter Wing, particularly those from the old Tuskegee legacy like Chappie, understood this brutal equation better than most. He was flying Gin Fizz again, patched up by Sergeant Sparks and his team. Chappie had personally supervised the stress test on the newly riveted wing section. The Mustang was a beautiful, powerful machine, but ground attack was a deadly misuse of its elegant, high-altitude design. The pilots often longed for the rugged, air-cooled radial engines of the P-47 Thunderbolt, a true jug designed for this type of abuse. But logistics and post-World War II purges of the inventory dictated the use of the available F-51s. The formation and the descent. Chappie was flying in the second element of a four-plane flight led by Captain Leroy Johnson. Their ordnance was calibrated for destruction. 4 5-inch high-velocity aircraft rockets, nicknamed Holy Moses, and 2 1,000-pound general-purpose bombs. The sheer weight of the bombs pulled at the wings, making the takeoff a delicate affair. As they crossed the bomb line, the atmosphere shifted. The radio traffic, typically a mix of banter and tactical updates, went silent, save for the necessary calls. The sky was the color of lead, and the frozen landscape below looked like a battlefield sculpted by despair. "Lead! Visual on the target area! Looks like the intel was right. I see the flash points," Chappie radioed, his voice tight. Captain Johnson acknowledged and initiated the attack sequence. The tactic was a classic pop-up maneuver. Fly low, below the effective ceiling of the heavy AAA, then pull up hard to gain enough height for the dive bomb run. The Mustang's speed at low altitude was its ally, but the upward pull exposed the belly, where the radiator scoop was located, to ground fire. Johnson went first, his Mustang a silver streak against the gray canvas. Almost instantly, the sky exploded in red and black puffs of flak. The sounds of the AAA rounds bursting were not just heard, but felt, a physical thump against the skull. Johnson's bombs were released, a successful drop. He pulled out hard, screaming, "Flak is heavy, watch the lower approach." The mission of no return. Now it was Chappie's turn. He pushed Gin Fizz into a shallow, screaming descent toward the riverbank. He locked onto his target, the central section of the pontoon bridge. He held the stick steady, his breathing shallow, the roar of the Merlin drowning out the frantic noise in his headset. His eyes darted, sight, gauges, sky. He saw a flash of movement, a burst of tracer fire from a quad mount, seemingly aimed directly at his forehead. He instinctively shoved a stick to the side and stomped on the rudder, throwing the Mustang into a violent, gut-wrenching slip maneuver. The tracer round streaked past, missing the nose by a hair's breadth. He corrected instantly, his training taking over. Maintain the sight picture, ignore the flak. The mission is the target. At the critical moment, he squeezed the bomb release. The two 1,000-pounders dropped cleanly, their weight instantly lessening the strain on the airframe. He watched the massive projectiles tumble toward the water, feeling a surge of terrible hope. Boom! Boom! A column of water, ice, and debris erupted, engulfing the pontoon bridge. It was a direct hit. Mission accomplished, but the price was immediate. As Chappie was pulling out of the dive, the most vulnerable moment, a single massive 37mm shell detonated nearby. It was not a direct hit, but the resulting shrapnel pulverized his vertical stabilizer. The Mustang yawed violently, the control surfaces mushy and unresponsive. "I'm hit! Control issue! Rudder's soft! I'm struggling!" Chappie gritted into the mic. Then the true horror. He looked to his left, where his wingman, Lieutenant Billy Hayes, should have been pulling up after his own successful run. Hayes's F-51 Red-Tail Fury was engulfed in a plume of white glycol smoke, a puncture in the coolant system. The Merlin was instantly dying, turning from a roaring god into a ticking time bomb. "Mayday! Mayday! Engine's gone! I'm bailing!" Hayes's voice was a ragged cry over the radio. Chappie watched, horrified, as Hayes jettisoned his canopy. The young lieutenant ejected moments later, his parachute blossoming into a stark white flower against the gray sky, drifting down toward the enemy-held hills. The moral weight of command. The rules of engagement were simple, brutal, and non-negotiable for ground attack pilots deep in enemy territory. No pickup attempts. The risk of losing a second plane and pilot was too high. The mission was paramount. But this was Billy Hayes, a young pilot, fresh out of integrated flight school, relying on the experience of the Tuskegee veterans like Chappie. They were a team forged in the brutal fire of a desperate war. He fought his own aircraft, trying to compensate for the damaged tail. His immediate flight leader, Johnson, was already heading for home base, calling for a search and rescue helicopter to be dispatched, a near impossible retrieval deep in hostile territory. "Skipper, I'm staying for orbit. I have a visual on Hayes. He's down near that ridgeline," Chappie reported, knowing he was disobeying a corps order. He was out of bombs and rockets, but he still had his .650 calibers. He had a job to do: cover his friend. For the next 10 minutes, Chappie James performed the most crucial role of the fighter pilot, guardian angel. He circled Hayes's descent, laying down controlled bursts of machine gun fire into the hills around the landing site, suppressing any enemy troops attempting to reach the downed pilot. He burned precious fuel, ignoring the constant threat of the MiGs who could appear at any moment. He saw Hayes hit the ground, gather his parachute, and run for cover. "Billy, this is Gin Fizz. I'm leaving. Run south. Run low. Godspeed," Chappie radioed, his throat tight with emotion. He finally turned the Mustang's battered nose south, pushing the engine to its limit. The sight of Hayes, a tiny figure alone in a hostile, snow-covered landscape, was burned into his memory. 101 missions. Every pilot had a tally. Chappie had just flown one of the toughest, a mission that stripped away the glamour of flight and laid bare the raw, personal, devastating human cost of the P-51's final war. He was heading home, but a piece of his conscience remained on that cold, unforgiving ridgeline. Chapter 4. The Price of Survival. Back at K-47, the mood was funereal. Chappie James brought Gin Fizz down in a controlled, almost surgical landing, compensating constantly for the damaged tail. As he cut the engine, the familiar, comforting roar of the Merlin sputtered into an eerie silence. He was physically and emotionally exhausted, the adrenaline of the fight replaced by the crushing weight of his wingman, Lieutenant Hayes, being left behind. The debriefing was short and somber. Chappie's bomb run was confirmed as a critical success. The pontoon bridge was destroyed, buying the ground forces the time they desperately needed. But the loss of Hayes cast a long, cold shadow. "James, your report states you violated standing orders by orbiting the area," Major Smith stated, his face grim. "Sir, I established visual confirmation on Lieutenant Hayes' parachute and landing zone. I suppressed enemy movement around his position until his chute was safely ditched," Chappie replied, his voice flat. He offered no excuses, only facts. Smith rubbed the bridge of his nose. "And you knowingly risked a second loss, not to mention a third had MiGs returned? The SAR package had no cover, James, none." "I knew the risk, Major, but he was alive. He needed cover for those first critical minutes on the ground. It was a calculated risk. I was out of major ordnance, and I was counting on the MiG pilots not returning to the lower altitudes where their jet performance is compromised. My priority was the life of my wingman." The Major finally sighed, acknowledging the unspoken reality of their air war. They were men flying a propeller plane in a jet war, and the old-fashioned code of mutual protection often superseded the operational guidelines. "Go clean up, Chappie. SAR will run a night sweep, but don't hold your breath. And tell Sparks Gin Fizz needs a new vertical stabilizer and a complete control system check. She's grounded until tomorrow night." A cold night in the hangar. The F-51 mechanics, often the unsung heroes of the Korean Air War, worked under intense pressure. The winter conditions were brutal, and the constant threat of enemy incursions meant they often worked through the night under floodlights. Sergeant Sparks was a study in grim efficiency. The damaged tail of Gin Fizz was exposed under the harsh light, revealing the severity of the flak hit. "See that, Lieutenant?" Sparks pointed to a hairline fracture running from a shrapnel tear. "If that fracture had been an inch wider, you'd have lost all rudder authority on pullout. She's lucky. The Mustang is tough, but she's not a Thunderbolt." Sparks was voicing the quiet resentment many Mustang pilots felt. The P-47 Thunderbolt, with its radial engine and robust frame, was notoriously tolerant of battle damage. The F-51, while fast and long-legged, was fatally vulnerable in the ground attack role due to its complex liquid-cooled engine system. Chappie spent a few hours in the hangar, not only to check on his plane, but also to be with his crew. These men, many of whom had been with the Tuskegee Airmen Unit since World War II, formed a crucial, unshakable foundation of trust that transcended the ongoing social struggles. "Any word on Hayes?" Chappie asked a young technician, PFC Miller, who was struggling to secure a replacement fuel drop tank. "Just static, Lieutenant. The SAR chopper is circling but staying low. They heard some small arms fire near the suspected landing zone." Miller didn't look up, his face etched with worry. This was the true weight of the F-51 mission, the knowledge that even a successful run often meant a human sacrifice. Every pilot that didn't come back added to the immense, invisible pressure that threatened to break the survivors. The philosophical duel, prop versus jet. Later that night, Chappie walked to the officers' mess, where he ran into Captain Roger Ace Albright, an F-86 Sabre pilot from the neighboring 4th Fighter Wing. Ace Albright, flying the fastest, most advanced jet fighter in the theater, often held a mixture of pity and respect for the Mustang pilots. "Heard you had a ruckus today, Chappie? Took a piece out of a MiG, they say?" Albright grinned, holding up a glass of lukewarm beer. He made a mistake. The MiG-15 is a terror above 25,000 feet, Roger. Down low, she's clumsy. The Mustang just had a better dance card. Albright's smile faded. Maybe so, but why are you guys still out there, flying that prop-driven coffin? We're supposed to be in a modern Air Force. We own the sky. You guys are cleaning up the mess underneath and paying for it with planes and men. The ground pounders need us, Roger. The F-80s burn too much fuel to loiter. The Saber's beautiful, but she's not built to drop napalm at 500 feet and then hang around to strafe a supply line. The Mustang can be refueled and rearmed faster than your Saber can cool down its engine. We are the volume, the endurance, the close-in muscle. Chappie explained patiently, articulating the role that defined his unit. He didn't mention the other reason, the legacy. They were the Tuskegee Airmen, the pilots who had fought for the right to fly, and they were going to do the job no matter how deadly the tool. They wouldn't fail the ground troops. I just hope Hayes makes it, Albright said quietly, lifting his glass. We all do, Chappie responded, the weight of the last few hours tightening in his chest. We all do.
Chapter 5. The Ghost on the Radio. The night dragged on, a cold, oppressive blanket over the airbase. Chappie James couldn't sleep. He sat by the squadron radio receiver, listening to the static-laced channel designated for search and rescue, SAR operations. The news was minimal and grim. The H-5 Dragonfly helicopters, the only aircraft capable of low-level infiltration deep behind enemy lines, were making short, dangerous forays toward the Changchan River area. The reports filtering back were disheartening. Heavy ground fire, limited visibility, and no sign of Lieutenant Billy Hayes. This waiting was, for Chappie, harder than the flying. In the cockpit of Jin Fiz, he commanded his destiny. Here, he was simply waiting for the verdict of fate, forced to confront the dark math of a downed pilot in Korea. Survival odds were astronomically low, particularly so far north. He remembered Hayes vividly, a young man with an infectious, booming laugh, an extraordinary pilot, and one of the few men of his generation who had flown both the F-51 Mustang and the early model F-80 Shooting Star jet, a sign of the rapid transition the Air Force was undergoing. Hayes had always been vocal about the jet's future, yet he handled the prop-driven Mustang with a deep, inherited respect. At 0300, a thin, weak voice cut through the static on the SAR frequency. "This is Sparrow. Sparrow calling any Allied air. My position is approximately 2 miles south of the Changchan River Bridge, hidden in a ravine. Need extraction. Leg wound. Over." Chappie's heart leapt. Sparrow. It was Hayes's call sign. He was alive. Chappie scrambled to ops, relaying the grid coordinates to Major Smith and the SAR controller. The base instantly snapped into a controlled frenzy. The race against dawn. The rescue mission faced a brutal constraint, the first light of dawn. The enemy knew that a downed pilot was a beacon, and they would sweep the area relentlessly as soon as they could see. The H-5 helicopters, affectionately called Paper Hornets for their fragility, were too slow and defenseless to fly daylight missions this deep into hostile territory. "We need a top-cover scramble," Major Smith declared. 2 F-51s, armed with minimum rockets and maximum ammo for suppression. They need to fly the helicopter in and suppress the ground fire until the bird can get out. "Chappie, you know the terrain. You fly lead." Chappie didn't hesitate. "Understood, Major, but Jin Fiz isn't ready. She's got a fresh tail, but Sparks needs hours for the control surfaces." "Then you take Blackjack, the spare bird in Hangar 3. Get airborne in 30 minutes." The decision was a calculated gamble. The F-51 was being used in its most perilous role,
escorting a slow helicopter into a heavily defended area under cover of night. The P-51's maneuverability and loiter time were the only assets that made this possible. The technical challenge of night CAS. Chappie, alongside his new wingman, Lieutenant Sam "Grip" Grimes, a quiet man who rarely missed a target, prepped the spare Mustang, Blackjack. Flying CAS at night was vastly different from daytime missions. Limited visibility. They had no fancy radar. All navigation was done by map, compass, and dead reckoning, relying on the plane's Sperry AN/RN6 radio compass to track the non-directional beacons NDBs, and now the weak signal from Hayes's survival radio. Target acquisition. Ground targets were invisible except for the muzzle flashes of enemy fire. Their attack tactic had to switch from precise bombing runs to flak suppression, hosing the visible fire with intense .50 caliber machine gun bursts. This demanded absolute focus to avoid hitting the helicopter or Hayes. Formation flying. Maintaining a tight formation with the Paper Hornet helicopter, which had a cruising speed of less than 100 miles per hour, required constant throttle adjustments and careful use of landing lights, briefly flashed to check positions, a dangerous practice over enemy lines. As they took off, the Merlin engine of Blackjack roared, its exhaust trailing faint blue flames into the cold, black night. Infiltration and suppression. Chappie led the flight, dipping down to hug the terrain, using the mountain shadows for cover. He was navigating by muscle memory, recalling the ridges and ravines from his earlier mission. "Sparrow, this is Blackjack lead. We've got the chopper inbound. Give us a flare on your position," Chappie radioed to Hayes. A tense silence followed. Then, a single brief red streak of light arced up from the dark ravine floor. The signal was a terrifyingly accurate target marker for the enemy, too. "There it is. Guns armed, Grip. We are going into a suppression orbit. Chopper, you have clearance to descend," Chappie shouted, kicking the stick forward. He plunged the Mustang into a tight, screaming turn around the ravine. The helicopter, flying lower than the tree line, was now a hovering target. The ground immediately erupted in enemy fire. The air around the canyon became saturated with the fiery orange and red lines of tracer rounds. "Grip, hit that bank! Suppress the heavy tracers!" He focused on the highest concentration of flashes near the ravine entrance. He dipped the nose of the F-51, and the 6.50 caliber machine guns opened up with a deafening, continuous roar. The effect was immediate. A dense, lethal curtain of lead tore into the enemy position. The tracers stopped flashing, replaced by the secondary explosions of enemy ammunition. He and Grip flew a continuous 8-figure pattern, strafing every sign of hostile fire, allowing the fragile H-5 helicopter just enough time to hover precariously over the ravine. Finally, the radio crackled with the most beautiful words Chappie had ever heard. "Sparrow is aboard. We are climbing out. Blackjack, thank you." The helicopter, now heavier, lumbered slowly toward the south. Chappie and Grip fell into a protective escort formation, flying close enough to draw fire, but ready to return it instantly. The rest of the flight was tense but uneventful. They had won. Landing back at K-47 just as the first weak light of dawn touched the horizon, Chappie James climbed out of the Mustang's cockpit, his hands shaking slightly from the strain. He saw a gurney being wheeled out of the helicopter, and on it, a pale but grinning Lieutenant Billy Hayes. "Chappie, you crazy son of a gun! That was the loudest lullaby I ever heard!" Chappie just nodded, a wave of profound relief washing over him. He hadn't just saved a pilot, he had preserved a piece of the Tuskegee legacy and cemented the enduring, life-or-death reliance the modern Air Force still had on its most rugged, aging warrior, the P-51 Mustang. He had completed his 33rd mission. he had 68 more to go, each one an invitation to fate. Chapter 6. The 101 Tally. The rescue of Lieutenant Billy Hayes gave the 44th Fighter Squadron a desperately needed infusion of morale. It proved that even in the face of jet-age hostility, the old-school bravery and the rugged capability of the F-51 Mustang still counted for something vital. Hayes, patched up and recovering, was transferred stateside, promising Chappie a steak bitter on American soil. For Lieutenant Daniel Chappie James Jr., the pace of the war only intensified. The missions were relentless, a grinding cycle of pre-dawn briefings, long flights over hostile territory, and chaotic, low-altitude attacks. The tally of his missions, that critical number that marked a pilot's journey toward rotation home, began to climb steadily. 35, 42, 58. His Mustang, Gin Fizz, once again fully operational after the heroic repair job by Sergeant Sparks, became a flying museum of modern warfare. It wore fresh scars weekly, patched bullet holes, replaced wingtips, and often a new coat of paint over stressed, cracked aluminum. The war of attrition and tactics. As the war settled into a brutal, grinding stalemate in 1951, the role of the F-51 became even more specialized and dangerous. The enemy adapted quickly, shifting from vulnerable large convoys to small, dispersed units that moved only at night. Chappie's missions morphed into intricate exercises in reconnaissance and precision attack. Road recce, or road reconnaissance. Flying solo or in pairs, Mustangs skimmed the frozen mountain roads looking for telltale signs of enemy movement, fresh tracks, newly camouflaged supply dumps, or the glint of steel under canvas. This often meant flying into known ambush zones. Train busting, one of the most dangerous assignments. North Korea used its extensive rail network to move heavy equipment. Attacking a fast-moving train required impeccable timing to avoid the collision with rising ground, the blast of the bombs, and the inevitable concentrated anti-aircraft fire the enemy often loaded onto dedicated flak cars. On his 61st mission, targeting a rail line near the city of Hamhung, Chappie demonstrated the perfect blend of calculated risk and aggressive flying that defined his approach. The train, a long string of black cars hauling artillery and ammunition, was moving fast through a narrow gorge. Flanking it were multiple gun positions. Chappie and his wingman, flying at just 100 feet above the rails, came in so low and fast they were visible for only seconds. Chappie used his HVAR rockets first, aiming not for the train, but for the tunnels just ahead of it. The rockets slammed into the entrances, causing rock slides that effectively sealed the train's path. Then, pulling up sharply to clear the peaks, he dove back down, using his .5 caliber machine guns to strafe the length of the train. He targeted the engine car and the exposed flak cars, unleashing a stream of 900 rounds per minute. The explosion of the ammunition cars was catastrophic, lighting up the gorge and turning the strategic rail line into a kilometer of wreckage. His plane took multiple hits from small arms fire, small caliber rifle rounds that thankfully were not heavy enough to compromise the engine cooling system. He returned with the taste of cordite and the tremor of the engine's laboring rhythm in his hands. The Integration Crucible. Chappie's exceptional performance was more than just personal achievement. It was a continuation of the Tuskegee legacy in the face of military desegregation. The Air Force had officially integrated its units in 1949, dissolving the all-black 332nd Fighter Group. However, the pilots, including James, continued to face subtle forms of discrimination and prejudice. The cockpit of the F-51 became the ultimate proving ground. out there flying missions that white squadrons often regarded as suicidal. The professionalism and skill of the former Tuskegee pilots forced a grudging, irreversible respect. Chappie, a natural leader with a powerful, commanding presence, became an unofficial moral compass for the integrated squadron. He was known for absolute preparedness. He studied the intelligence reports until he knew the target zone better than the enemy did. Pilots' welfare. He championed the need for better armor plating on the F-51s and consistently pushed back against mission profiles that placed his pilots in unnecessarily high-risk situations. The big picture. He constantly reminded his men that their mission was not for medals, but for the lives of the infantrymen on the ground. The final approach. Mission 101. By late spring 1951, the grind had nearly broken him, but the number was now flashing in his mind: 99, 100. Chappie's 101st and final mission was a milk run, a simple photo reconnaissance flight in the deep south of the peninsula, checking for residual enemy units. It was a mission designed to minimize risk for a pilot about to rotate home. He flew Gin Fizz with a sense of reflective calm, the aircraft feeling like an extension of his own body after a year of continuous combat. He thought of Hayes, of Sparks, of Major Smith, and of the many young men who never saw their 101st mission. He thought of his wife and family back home, the promise of a life beyond the constant shadow of death. As he completed the final leg of the flight and turned toward K-47, he radioed, "K-47, this is Gin Fizz. 101 complete. Bringing the old girl home." Landing the Mustang for the final time in Korea was an emotional release. He taxied to the revetment, and as he climbed out, the entire squadron, mechanics, support staff, and fellow pilots were there waiting. Sergeant Sparks approached him, not with a handshake, but with a piece of polished aluminum, cut from the scrap of an F-51's tail. Engraved on it was the outline of a P-51, the silhouette of a MiG-15, and the number 101. "Welcome home, Lieutenant," Sparks said, his voice thick with emotion. Chappie took the medal, the small, cold weight, a tangible reminder of the 101 times he had faced death in the skies over Korea. He looked at the old, reliable Mustang, a veteran of 2 wars, and then at the sky, the same sky that would soon be filled only with the screaming echoes of jets. His time in the F-51 was over, but the discipline, leadership, and resilience he forged in the brutal Korean sky would define the rest of his legendary career, propelling the boy from Pensacola, Florida, toward a future he could not yet imagine, a future as the first African-American 4-star general.
Chapter 7. The Jet Stream and the General's Shadow. Returning stateside in the summer of 1951, Daniel Chappie James Jr. was no longer just a talented pilot. He was a combat-hardened veteran, having flown 101 grueling missions in the anachronistic F-51 Mustang. His survival, coupled with his impeccable service record and the successful rescue of Lieutenant Hayes, made him an undeniable asset to the emerging United States Air Force, the USAF. However, the transition was abrupt and challenging. The war's most brutal chapter was behind him, but the new Cold War Air Force demanded a complete transformation. Chappie was immediately assigned to Otis Air Force Base, Massachusetts, to train as an all-weather jet fighter pilot with the 58th Fighter Interceptor Squadron. The old ways of the piston engine were over. Mastering the jet age, F-80 and F-86. The shift from the Merlin engine's thunder to the screaming turbine of a jet was a technical and psychological leap. The F-51 was forgiving, its thrust was immediate, and its control surfaces reliable even at low speeds.
The new Lockheed F-80 Shooting Star, which James flew briefly in Korea alongside the Mustang, and the subsequent North American F-86 Sabre were demanding. Chappie, a quick study, embraced the science of jet flight. High-altitude physics. Jet engines performed optimally at high altitudes where the P-51 had once struggled. This required a fundamental shift in combat strategy, vertical maneuvers, sustained high speeds, and the physics of the sound barrier. Fuel management. The thirsty early jets, particularly the F-80, had notoriously short combat radii. This demanded precise, calculator-like fuel management, a stark contrast to the Mustang's vast endurance. G-force endurance. Dogfighting in a jet imposed far greater physical stress. Chappie, known for his imposing size and strength, quickly mastered the anti-G straining maneuvers needed to maintain consciousness during high-speed, high-G turns. He excelled, becoming the operations officer of the 58th FIS and later commanding the 437th FIS and the 60th FIS. He was now a leading figure in the Air Defense Command, protecting American skies from the perceived threat of Soviet bombers. He wasn't just flying jets, he was commanding the units that defined a future of air warfare. The social war, leadership in the integrated Air Force. While Chappie was soaring in the cockpit, he was simultaneously engaged in a subtler yet equally significant war on the ground, the fight for true integration. Despite the official policy of desegregation, black officers, including James, still faced institutional hurdles and social prejudice. Chappie's response was not confrontation, but exemplary leadership and unwavering professionalism. He used his platform to advocate for meritocracy, earning the respect of his peers, superiors, and the local community. In 1954, while at Otis Air Force Base, he received the Massachusetts Junior Chamber of Commerce Young Man of the Year Award for his outstanding community relations. He leveraged his visibility to bridge the divide, showing the American public that a black leader was not only capable of flying the nation's most complex, cutting-edge warplanes, but also a pillar of his community. This period was critical. The skills he honed in the F-51 in the unforgiving Korean environment had instilled in him a unique philosophy that performance and professionalism were the only currency that mattered. This philosophy prepared him for his next major test, command in the jungles of Southeast Asia, where he would once again face the shadow of the MiG.